White heavy checkmark disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction created for entertainment purposes only. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or real-life events is purely coincidental. The narrative explores mature themes such as emotional tension, romantic conflict, and human vulnerability. Viewer discretion is advised. This story does not promote or condone infidelity, manipulation, or betrayal in any form. It is meant to spark introspection and deliver compelling drama based on choices and consequences in personal relationships. It was a quiet Tuesday evening. Emma had just finished setting the table for 2 grilled salmon, a crisp salad, and a bottle of red wine breathing on the counter. She had planned a cozy dinner for herself and her husband, Daniel, something they rarely had time for these days. Work had kept them both busy, and this dinner was supposed to be a pause, a chance to breathe again as husband and wife. She was in the kitchen lighting candles when she heard the front door open. "Babe, I brought someone with me," Daniel called out cheerfully. Emma turned, confused. Her brows furrowed as a tall, confident man stepped in behind her husband. He looked slightly older than Daniel, but just as fit, with sharp eyes and a smile that seemed too practiced. He wore a black coat that clung to him despite the rain outside. Daniel's voice followed, "Emma, this is Marcus, my old college roommate." Emma wiped her hands and approached with a polite smile. "I've heard about you," she said, extending her hand. Marcus took it slowly, deliberately. "Only good things, I hope." His voice was smooth, like velvet over glass. Emma nodded, but her eyes lingered on the way he looked at her. Not casually, not politely. It was focused, and intimate in a way she couldn't explain. Dinner quickly shifted from casual to strange. Marcus was charming, yes, but there was a current underneath his words that made Emma's skin prickle. He told stories about Daniel, funny, embarrassing, oddly specific ones that painted Daniel as reckless and wild, not the serious, responsible man she married. Daniel laughed them off, clearly enjoying the walk down memory lane, but Emma found herself growing tense. As she served the main course, she noticed how Marcus's eyes followed her. Not just her face, but her hands, the way she moved, the way she leaned across the table. Every smile from him was a little too long, every compliment just a shade too personal. "You really know how to put together a beautiful evening," he said, his voice low. Emma forced a laugh and looked away. Daniel, perhaps too caught up in his old memories, didn't notice. Or maybe he did, but didn't want to make it awkward. Emma wasn't sure. After dinner, the three of them moved to the living room. Marcus picked up her photo frame, the one from their wedding in Napa. "You looked stunning that day," he said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. Emma's heart skipped, not out of excitement but confusion. Was she imagining this? Was it just harmless talk? Or was there something else behind his words? Daniel yawned and stood. "I have to take a quick work call," he said, walking out of the room. And just like that, Emma was alone with Marcus. The living room fell into a tense silence the moment Daniel stepped out. Emma sat stiffly on the edge of the couch, trying to focus on the soft rain tapping against the windows. Marcus, however, settled into the armchair like he belonged there. Legs crossed, eyes fixed on her with that same quiet intensity. "You've got a lovely home," he said after a moment, sipping slowly from his wine. "Warm, inviting." "Thank you," Emma replied curtly, still avoiding his gaze. "We've been here a few years. And you've been married, what, 5 years now?" he asked, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. Daniel always talked about wanting something real. Looks like he found it. There was something about his tone. It wasn't admiration, it was closer to amusement? Jealousy? Emma couldn't tell. She forced another smile, but her chest felt tighter now. "Yes, it hasn't always been easy, but we've built a life we're proud of." "Easy is boring," Marcus said, smirking. "Daniel used to chase fire. I guess we all grow up eventually." Emma glanced toward the hallway where Daniel had disappeared, her mind spinning. She wasn't sure if Marcus was insulting her or testing her. Either way, she didn't like it. "I'm not sure what you're trying to say," she said carefully. I'm not trying to say anything, he replied, voice dropping. I just think it's interesting, watching people settle, seeing what they give up to feel safe. He rose from the armchair and walked toward the fireplace, casually inspecting a few books on the mantel, his back to her. Emma watched him carefully, unsure if she should speak or wait it out. Then he turned, and his eyes were darker now, more deliberate. You know, he said almost casually, Daniel never told me how beautiful you are. The words hit the air like a dropped glass. Emma stood immediately, hands clenched. That's inappropriate. Marcus chuckled, walking slowly back toward the couch. Is it? Or is it just honest? I think you've had enough wine, she said, stepping toward the kitchen. I'll call Daniel. But Marcus gently reached out and caught her wrist, not forcefully, just enough to stop her. The warmth of his hand sent an involuntary jolt up her arm. I'm not here to cause trouble, he said softly. But I'd be lying if I said I haven't thought about what it would be like if we met under different circumstances. Emma pulled her arm away. Her heart was pounding, not from desire, but from shock, confusion, anger. A part of her wanted to scream. Another part didn't know what to say at all. Just then, Daniel's footsteps echoed down the hallway. Everything okay out here? He called out. Emma took a breath and turned, quickly composing herself. Yes, she lied. We were just talking. Marcus smiled, sitting back down. Yeah, just catching up. But everything had changed. A line had been crossed, and Emma wasn't sure what came next. The clang of dishes and the hum of the dishwasher filled the silence as Emma busied herself in the kitchen, her movements precise but distracted. Her hands were shaking slightly as she scrubbed a plate that was already clean. The memory of Marcus's touch on her wrist still lingered, like a burn she couldn't wash away. Daniel walked in with an empty glass, oblivious to the invisible storm that had passed just moments ago. Dinner smells great, he said, placing the glass in the sink beside her. You and Marcus were having a pretty deep talk earlier. Emma didn't look up. Was just catching up, she said flatly. Daniel leaned against the counter, arms folded. He's changed a bit, hasn't he? Not the guy I remember from college. A little more arrogant. A little too smooth. Emma finally looked up, meeting his eyes. You noticed that too? He shrugged. He's always been charming. That's part of what made him fun back then. Just didn't expect him to bring that energy into our home, I guess. The tension between them wasn't hostile, but it was charged. Emma didn't know whether to tell Daniel what had happened. Would he believe her, or would he think she misread things? He said something strange, Emma finally said, drying her hands, about people settling, about giving up excitement for safety. Daniel raised a brow. Sounds like him. He used to say things like that when he got drunk. Made it seem like everyone else's choices were boring just because they weren't dramatic. Emma hesitated, then said carefully. He also said, You never told him how beautiful I was. Daniel frowned. What? Yeah? Emma said, trying to sound casual. But her voice betrayed a flicker of discomfort. It made me uncomfortable. Daniel straightened. Did he touch you? She hesitated again. He grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but enough to make me want to leave the room. A muscle in Daniel's jaw twitched. He looked away, jaw tight, hands clenched into fists. I'll talk to him. No, Emma said quickly, placing a hand on his arm. Not yet. I just want this night to be over. Let's get through dinner, and then he can go. Daniel nodded slowly, clearly conflicted. You should have told me the second it happened. I didn't want to ruin everything, Emma whispered. You were excited to see him again. Daniel looked at her with something deeper now, guilt maybe, regret. He reached for her hand and squeezed it. Nothing matters more than you. If he steps out of line again, he's out. Outside, the rain fell harder. Inside, the kitchen was full of unsaid words, but at least the silence between them was now honest. From the hallway, Marcus's voice called out, You two lovebirds coming back? This bottle of wine isn't going to drink itself. Emma and Daniel exchanged a glance. Dinner wasn't even served yet, but the night was already broken. The dining room glowed warmly under the amber light of the chandelier, casting soft shadows over the table dressed in white linen and polished cutlery. The smell of roasted chicken, herbs, and red wine filled the air. Emma sat at the far end of the table while Daniel and Marcus occupied the sides, forming an awkward triangle of energy. Marcus poured himself another glass of wine and lifted it slightly toward Emma. "To your cooking, Emma. You've really outdone yourself. I can't remember the last time I had a meal prepared with this much care." Emma forced a smile and nodded. "Thank you." Daniel's jaw tightened at Marcus's tone. He wasn't imagining it anymore. The subtle flirtation, the edge behind every compliment. Marcus wasn't being friendly, he was towing the line. And he was doing it deliberately. "So," Marcus said, setting down his glass with a clink, "how long has it been?" 10 years since graduation. You two were just dating then." Daniel nodded cautiously. "Yeah, a lot's changed." "Not everything," Marcus said with a smirk, letting his eyes linger on Emma for a second too long. "Some things get better with time. Some don't change at all." Emma shifted in her seat. Daniel saw it. How uncomfortable she was, how Marcus was playing some unspoken game. He reached for her hand under the table and gave it a reassuring squeeze. "So Marcus," Daniel said sharply, "what's next for you? Are you still in Boston?" Marcus leaned back, seemingly unfazed. "Nah, I left Boston. Bounced around. Freelance consulting now. Which means I'm free, no boss, no rules, no one to answer to. Kinda beautiful, isn't it?" Emma responded softly. "And lonely." Marcus chuckled. "Only if you don't know how to enjoy your own company." There was a beat of silence. Emma stood. "I'll get dessert." She escaped into the kitchen, needing air, needing space. Her heart pounded. The weight of Marcus's words and eyes was suffocating. Back at the table, Daniel leaned forward, lowering his voice. "What are you doing, Marcus?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean. You're being disrespectful. In my home to my wife." Marcus smirked. "Relax, Dan. You've gotten so serious over the years. I'm just joking around." "That wasn't a joke. And you're not just joking around with her either." Marcus's eyes darkened, but he kept smiling. "You really think she's yours just because you put a ring on her finger?" Daniel stood up suddenly, chair scraping back. "Finish your wine. Then you're leaving." Before Marcus could respond, Emma returned, holding a tray with slices of pie and shaking hands. "What's going on?" she asked, looking from one man to the other. "Dessert," Marcus said, grabbing his plate like nothing had happened. Perfect timing. Emma sat down, but the table felt different now, charged and volatile. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one building between them. The rest of dinner was eaten in silence, with the occasional scrape of a fork or clink of glass breaking the tension. No one asked for seconds. The storm outside had mellowed into a drizzle, but inside the house, the atmosphere remained electric with unspoken words and unresolved tension. After dinner, Marcus thanked Emma with a cool nod and retired to the guest room. Daniel followed silently behind, watching him disappear into the hallway like a shadow you couldn't shake. Emma was in the kitchen, staring into the sink, mindlessly washing dishes that were already clean. Her thoughts spiraled. Marcus's words echoed in her ears. Every glance, every insinuation. And Daniel, she saw the way he reacted. Protective, yes, but also uneasy. Like something he'd feared all along had finally shown up at their doorstep. When Daniel returned, he didn't speak at first. He simply came up behind Emma and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "He's not staying another night," Daniel said quietly. Emma closed her eyes. "I figured." "I'm sorry," he added. "I didn't know he would be like this. He used to be different." Emma set the dish down and turned to face him. "People change." There was a pause before she added, "Did you really not notice the way he looks at me?" Daniel's expression tightened. "I did. And I hate it." Why didn't you say anything sooner? I wanted to trust him. I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. Until tonight. They both leaned against the counter, the silence between them heavier than before. The vulnerability in Daniel's voice softened Emma's anger. But there was more she had to say, more she couldn't hold in any longer. Before you walked into the kitchen earlier, she said, he told me something. Daniel's eyes searched hers. What did he say? Emma hesitated. He said, he never stopped thinking about me, that you didn't deserve me, that I should have ended up with him. Daniel's fists clenched at his sides. I told him he was out of line, she added quickly. I told him I loved you, and he needed to respect that. Daniel turned away and paced the floor, rage simmering just beneath his surface. He crossed a line. He knew exactly what he was doing. Emma placed a hand on his chest, grounding him. But I didn't cross it, Daniel. I chose you. I'm still choosing you. His gaze softened as he looked down at her. I know, but it's hard. Knowing someone I once called a brother would come into our home and try to tear us apart. She nodded. That's why we have to be stronger than that. They stood there, holding each other, the storm now barely a whisper against the windows. For a moment it felt like the house was still again, like they were in control of their story, not Marcus. But little did they know Marcus hadn't gone to sleep. He was standing just beyond the hallway listening, his face blank, his heart bitter, his next move already forming in his mind. The house had quieted, but Marcus's mind had not. Behind the cracked door of the guest room, he stood in the dark, fists clenched, jaw tight. He had heard everything. Emma's rejection, Daniel's fury, their loyalty to one another. Should have ended it. But for Marcus, rejection didn't mean defeat. It meant challenge. He hadn't come just for dinner. He hadn't come just to catch up. He came because of unfinished business, because in his mind, Emma was the what-if that haunted him through every bad relationship, every lonely night. Seeing her happy with Daniel, his once best friend, was like salt in a wound that never healed. At 2 a.m., the hallway was quiet. The only sound was the ticking of the clock in the living room and the occasional soft patter of rain. Marcus stepped out of his room, barefoot, moving quietly toward the kitchen. The refrigerator light bathed the room in a cold glow as he poured himself a drink, trying to mask the boiling frustration in his chest. But then Emma entered. She had come down for water, not expecting anyone to be there. She froze for a second when she saw him. You should be sleeping, she said, keeping her voice even. Marcus didn't move. Couldn't. Too much on my mind. Emma walked to the cupboard, deliberately keeping space between them. You should leave tomorrow. For everyone's sake. Is that what he wants? Or what you want? His voice had that dangerous softness, the kind that makes your skin crawl. Emma turned to him, her eyes fierce. What I want is peace in my home. What I want is for my husband to sleep at night without wondering what kind of man he let through our door. Marcus chuckled bitterly. He was never man enough for you. Stop it. Her voice was sharper now. You don't get to talk about him like that. Not here. Not ever. Marcus stepped closer, but Emma didn't flinch. Don't ruin what little dignity you have left, Marcus, she warned. That stopped him. For a moment he stared at her, really stared. Not with desire, but with recognition. She was no longer the girl from his memories. She was a woman who had found her strength, and she wasn't going to bend for anyone, especially not him. Then came a voice from the stairwell. Step away from my wife. It was Daniel. He had been listening too, this time not with doubt but with resolve. The look in his eyes was colder than anything Marcus had ever seen. He wasn't the old best friend anymore. He was a man protecting what was his. Marcus raised his hands in mock surrender and backed off. No harm done, he muttered. But the damage had already been done. The next few hours would unravel everything Marcus had hoped for, and push Daniel and Emma into a decision that could either break them or bind them forever. The tension in the house that night was thick, so heavy it seemed to bend the walls inward. After Marcus retreated to his guest room without another word, Daniel and Emma sat together in the dimly lit living room, neither speaking for a long time. The sound of the rain tapping against the windows became their only conversation. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she wrapped them around a warm mug of tea. Daniel watched her, silently torn between anger, confusion, and hurt. Not because he doubted her loyalty, she had proven her strength tonight, but because he had allowed this to happen. He had brought Marcus into their home. He had opened the door to chaos, thinking he was simply doing a kind thing for an old friend. "Do you think I wanted this?" Emma asked quietly, as if reading his thoughts. "You think I invited his attention?" Daniel shook his head. "No, I don't think that, but I do think I missed the signs. I trusted someone who clearly didn't deserve it." Emma turned to him, her eyes reflecting the soft lamplight. "He's leaving tomorrow. That's not up for debate. But what happens after that? What happens to us?" That was the real question. The line Marcus had crossed hadn't just insulted Emma. It had bruised Daniel's pride, shaken his sense of judgment, and exposed something raw between them. But what they still had, the love, the history, the life they built, was far more powerful than any single night. Daniel reached out, taking her hand gently. "We choose what happens next, Emma. Not Marcus. Not the past. We do." She nodded slowly. "Then let's choose to move forward. Together." They held each other in that moment. Not as husband and wife wounded by betrayal, but as partners who had survived a storm. A storm that had tried to tear through their trust but failed. The next morning, before sunrise, Daniel knocked on Marcus's door. There was no anger in his voice, just finality. "You're leaving. Now." Marcus looked at him, eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night, and gave a short nod. There was nothing left to say. By the time the sun broke through the clouds, Marcus was gone. His shadow no longer hung over the house. Later that day, Emma cooked breakfast as if it were any ordinary morning, humming softly to herself. Daniel came in, wrapped his arms around her waist, and kissed her temple. It was simple, ordinary, and beautiful. They didn't need grand gestures to heal. They just needed each other. But little did they know, this wasn't the end of Marcus. He had left, yes, but not for good. He had left behind something that would stir trouble once again, in the form of a secret that would return in the final chapter. Emma found it tucked beneath the couch cushion the next evening. It was folded neatly, her name scribbled on the outside in Marcus's rushed, familiar handwriting. At first, she considered throwing it away unread. Whatever Marcus had to say, he'd already had the chance to speak. But something about the heaviness of the paper, the way it almost called to her, made her pause. She opened it slowly, her hands hesitant. "Emma, if you're reading this, it means I've already left." "Good." I didn't have the courage to say what needed to be said face to face. "First, I'm sorry. Not just for what I did last night, but for everything I've been hiding since I walked through your door. You don't know the full story, and maybe you never should. But the truth has a way of clawing its way out. There was a reason I came here. Not just to see Daniel. Not just for shelter. I came because I needed to see you again. Years ago, before you married him, you and I shared something. Maybe just a few moments, maybe just glances. But for me, it was real. I knew I was too late even then. Daniel was already in your heart. But I never let go of what could have been. When I heard you two had built this picture-perfect life, I thought I had made peace with it. I hadn't. I came here, not with the intent to ruin anything, but to test something inside myself. To see if I could finally let go. Turns out I couldn't. What I did, how I looked at you, what I tried, that wasn't love. That was obsession, and it was wrong. Daniel didn't deserve it. You didn't deserve it. And I'll carry the shame of that with me. But there's one more truth I have to leave you with, and I don't know if you'll believe it. Daniel's been keeping something from you, too. Something about last year. About a weekend business trip that never really happened. I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because you deserve to know everything before you keep moving forward. Because if I'm going to leave anything behind, let it be the full truth, not just about me, but about him. I'm gone now. For good this time. Take care of yourself. Marcus. Emma sat frozen, the letter trembling in her hands. She wasn't sure what she felt. Rage? Betrayal? Heartbreak? Or just exhaustion? Could it be true? Could Daniel have his own secrets? Had everything they rebuilt been based on half-truths? The front door creaked open. Daniel stepped in, smiling, holding a small bag of groceries. Normal, familiar, trusting. Emma hid the letter behind her back. "Everything okay?" Daniel asked. Emma forced a soft smile. "Yeah, just thinking." But her heart thundered. The storm with Marcus had passed. But another storm might just be brewing. Inside her home. Inside her marriage. And this time it would test everything she thought she knew. 23.